So having listened to him, I cannot tell you, Marcia, or anybody, exactly beyond saying that public servants joining will pay. I need to have a definition of what they mean, because the public service has employees who are permanent, who have been appointed. They have employees who join the service and are temporary for what seems to be a permanent period of time. We know how, and this has gone on for decades and decades. A person might be working for 5 years, 5 months, 15 years, and temporary or whatever the case may be. Now, if you look around this room, and as you brought it up, I count about less than half the members of parliament sitting there at the time when he was debating that pension amendment bill, and they were getting ready to pass the two pieces of legislation. I also want to note that beyond the 15 minutes that Minister Strawn spoke to this bill, no one else spoke on the bill. So there was no discussion, no speeches, and certainly no debate, as the person who commented earlier. There was no discussion. Now, my question is, how serious can this administration and individual members of parliament be that you have two pieces of legislation and you use the excuse, and I referred to it when you invited me on Sunday, and you use the excuse of having a single debate, which they call a cognate debate because they're related matters, to rush in a very cavalier fashion. That's the only way I can describe it. A very cavalier fashion. This very serious legislation, two of them, through Parliament. So what it was, that's that problem. I want now to go, Marcia, and say something to you and Barbadians about the issue of the other bill that Mr. Jordan, the Minister of Labour, would have led off. Now, if you go back to that, because that was the first piece that was dealt with first, and it was this Mr. Strawn used to say, well, it's a cognate debate, and we had a debate on what Mr. Jordan did. My question is, did we really have a debate on the piece of legislation which was about the National Insurance and Social Security Amendment legislation? And the reason I'm saying so, and I would read it here for you, I might have done it before, but I'm going to do it again. When you want to know what a piece of legislation is about, you go to the beginning of the document, which has objects and reasons. And this read as follows. This bill would, A, amend the law relating to the system of national insurance and social security by establishing a body corporate to administer the system and perform the functions relating to national insurance and social security hitherto administered and performed by the Department of National Insurance, and B, provide for related matters. Now, in the context of this bill, the first thing that I read, those 4 lines and 2 words at the bottom of the 5th line, say basically, and Caswell spoke to this bill is about speaking to or addressing or setting out the changes to be made in the administration, the legal structure, and operations of the National Insurance Scheme, which will hitherto, after this legislation is passed, or henceforth rather, will be called the National Insurance Service and Social Security. Instead of the scheme, it will call it service. And as Caswell pointed out, we have, and I think I mentioned this previously, and certainly in other places, we have a hybrid situation, which does not require the urgency with which they brought this, because at the end of the day, you have a structure. Essentially, the anomaly that there was that you had an entity operating as a board, but it also certain functions, the staffing functions of national insurance stayed within the public service. So in other words, employees of the national insurance scheme as it is now would have fallen under, I believe, not only the rules of recruitment and selection, but also compensation. And Caswell can nod yes precisely. There are two sides to most coins. And for this coin, one, people often argue that the nature of the national insurance scheme, because you were talking about a over billion plus fund and financial decisions and whatever. Some people argued that the salaries that were paid, because they were civil servant salaries, were not attractive enough. However, the thing about the civil service structure is that there is greater, what I would call, control of decision making in relation to personnel, and the lesser likelihood of people being treated unfairly, with political changes and so on. Caswell spoke to that about the persons going with the empty lunchbox, etc. On the positive side, it is felt that if you can have persons, the board control them. The positive is that you probably can take the salary scales away from the public service and offer more competitive salaries and so on. But none of that was spoken to in the ministerial statement. In fact, what I was looking for, and I'm trying to operate between the computer, my cell phone, and my tablet, trying to pull up information, and I will come back to this, but I'll tell you, the ministerial statement, it says the title was Ministerial Statement on Revitalization of National Insurance Scheme. Quite interestingly, the consultations, from what I have, my research has been showing me, was that this was the term that was used about the revitalization. So in other words, the minister and his colleagues and the prime minister and so on, as Minister of Finance, they went around this country. I don't know, I would have to get the details of how many meetings were held, perhaps how many people turned up, how many people submitted information. That's the kind of thing that we probably should have heard of in a serious debate. This revitalization exercise, where they were soliciting the views, hopefully should have generated a report. So if you are issuing a statement on revitalization of national insurance scheme, where is the substantive report that informs the 9-page statement made by the minister? Because in essence, normally, again, I didn't sit in the House of Assembly, but I know how it works. And I sat in the Senate, where we had to deal with matters that came up. I was leader of government business, and therefore it was my business to know how these things work and how I had to function over the 10 years that I did it. Now, if, as I said, there was this consultation on revitalization, the output from the exercise should have been a revitalization report, right? Normally, as I started to say, in the way things work, such a report would have been laid in Parliament, and the public would have been able to scrutinize that report to find out, one, did they capture in any serious or comprehensive way the inputs? Did they take on board those inputs? Did they argue why they didn't? In other words, let us see what has been the impact, the outcome, the contribution, where our contributions are located, and so on. Now, I have not heard of a report. I don't know if one was done, but we keep hearing, the minister certainly in the statement talked about wide consultation, and others have mentioned wide consultation. So my concern really, Marcia, is that in terms of process, this thing is severely flawed. And it really begs the question, if it is so serious and it was so urgent, why is it that half of the Parliament was missing? And certainly missing, to me, at a time when, to me, one of the more important decisions of the process, that is where you're voting on these things and so on. So I realized, because I went to check when I first saw how scant the room was, and I raised it this morning with Mr. Blackman on the call-in program. I asked him, I said I would need to know whether the sitting was quorate, but as I observed when I went to the standing orders of the House of Assembly, a quorum is 9 persons, including the presiding officer, which would be the Speaker of the House. So out of 30 people, 21 could have been absent and the business could have gone on. And looking at the room, we weren't far from a 21 being missing. And that is a sad thing, And so,
yeah, especially for something this important that affects so many people.
Uh,
that are poor people, and that is the thing. How, this is so important, and they only spend 15 minutes. And look at the room, Barbados. Look at Parliament. This is it.
you know,
How many persons? One, two, three, four,
four,
five,
five, six, seven, eight,
six,
nine,
seven, eight,
10,
nine.
11, about 11, and there may be somebody's hand I'm seeing in a corner here. So in
Right.
essence, what you had, and I would be generous and add two or so that I can't see if they are there, but I know the configuration of the house as well, so I can kind of count the number of seats that are not visible. The optics of this thing is atrocious, and I'll tell you why. You are telling the public that we should be comfortable with you rushing a bill to Parliament, certainly in relation to the national insurance bill that you did not follow the rules. I checked and I mentioned it on Sunday that when I looked, and I looked today while I was holding on to talk on the call-in program, the bill at the time that I checked was still not gazetted as found in the online edition of the Gazette. The official Gazette is found is done by the government printery, and they have an online thing where you can find. It was not there yesterday. It was not there on Sunday. It was not there then on Friday, and so nobody who happened to hear about this could have read that bill um, using that source as a means of finding it. So my question is, this is so urgent, so very urgent, and you are going to tell me you're not even sitting in there to speak to it, and then you compound it by saying, well, we're going to rush this. And I recommend people listen to Minister Strong, because at one point he said that, and I will shuffle through my papers, I might find his comment. He made a comment to the extent that he was in essence in a hurry. Oh, this is what he said, because I took the note. I'm a good note taker. As he was speaking, referring to the bill, he said, I do not have the all the time, sir, to go through it when people were getting two pensions and all the long leave and all the different things that happened. The reality is twofold, sir. On the one hand, our national insurance
Mhm.
effectively is a national pension, whatever. No, he's telling me he doesn't have the time to explain, because if it is something of importance, explain it. Don't tell me you don't have the time. If it's trivial, you don't have to speak to it. So in essence, I'm trying to rush this bill to tell people, and do it on a Friday afternoon, because I guess everybody like, I hear people complaining about members of parliament and so on. I don't know about others, but I work very hard in the years that I served the people of this country. And so I can understand sometimes when you're meeting in parliament, but as it looks now, I guess they take turns in turning up and not speaking. So, they turn up, some of them, they might be on the precincts. And I will tell you this, Marcia, I am passionate about this because I think that when you're called to national service, I know people used to say, no, but I vote for you, and certainly didn't. And I would have been better off perhaps doing something else in terms of remuneration and all that. And we could talk about that, but that's not the issue. My thing is, when you're called to serve, you serve. And in a case like this, I remember when I was leader of government business, people used to say to me, the person, one of the main spokespersons for the opposition, say to me, why don't you ask your members to cut it short? I said to him, we are speaking to the people, we are speaking to these debates. And anybody who checks on the former debates in the Senate would realize that we spent a lot of time seriously addressing matters. So when I sit and listen to less than 15 minutes, not of some routine amendment or some minor alteration to legislation, but legislation that's going to impact on Barbadians in the way that this is, and this is what we see. And then we're going to say we had to do this because it's urgent, but not urgent enough for people to turn up and
To
contribute.
turn up, to turn up.
And
And this is the part I tell you, Mr. Franklin, this is, and Miss McLean, I don't know, it just irks me. The disregard for Barbadians, the disrespect, just the lack of care. Look how scanty this place is. And this is so, did they realize how important this is to Barbadians? I don't understand. And I want to say to Barbados, listen, I know I'm not Norwegian, but let me tell you something. Don't do this again. Don't give nobody 30 seats again. Look at this. You now have no opposition in there, nobody to debate. They're having he just gets up and he speaks for 15 minutes for something that could affect you for so many years and your generation. And this is how they treat Barbadians. And for some reason, I tell you, Mr. Caswell, that thing irks me, annoys me to believe this is, look at this, 15 minutes is what he used to give a speech on something so important, and then give you a holiday for you to walk up and so on, and then for tomorrow for the Senate, because they know they know they have the majority. So then the Senate is going to for the Senate to go and pass the bill tomorrow. Huh?
I just want to say something because I really have been going on, but I feel very strongly about this. You see, because at the end of the day, what is happening, Barbadians don't have a voice. But I really want to ask the question: what exactly did the people? And I can't remember his name. Though I remember the comment about speeches versus debate. What
Pedro.
exactly did people speak on? Because if the bill that was passed in relation to the national insurance spoke in large measure to those changes, I didn't hear Mr. Strong speak to those because he was very happy to say that he was this was a cognate debate, meaning a single debate, but that does not a single debate does not mean a shortened debate or a superficial treatment of the issue. And I think that for something like this, which is going to impact the lives of people, they owe it to Barbadians to say, look, this is what we're doing. First of all, they owe it to us not to rush this kind of thing. And I'll tell you this now, and because I think I can pause and let Caswell and other people speak, because I can go on this because it angers me. I don't speak for as somebody said to me today. It was, in fact, Mr. Blackman said to me today, because I held on for 2 hours and 20 something minutes on brass tacks this morning to lunchtime. Jokingly said to the producer, the guy who answers the phone, that I can make breakfast, which I did while I was talking to him, but I could have cooked lunch too. But I held on because I felt it was absolutely critical that people's voices be heard on this matter. Because, and I want to say publicly now, Marcia, thank you for doing this program, because if you did not do it, people with this legislation would have passed and we would have woken up. Those who went partying yesterday and today would wake up tomorrow, and I can bet you that by 4 o'clock, the Senate would have gone through this unless the independent senators decided that they needed to speak, and we would have heard of something. And people, in fact, I will say this, the person on the calling program today was not even aware that 2 pieces of legislation were passed yesterday on Friday.
You
He
see?
was not aware, because I listened, and that's one of the things that I felt that I could not afford to hang up, especially after hearing Caswell speak to him, because Caswell made reference to the contributions to be made by public servants from January 2024. And Mr. Blackman was not even aware, because obviously he might not have had a chance to listen to the debate. And there was no big discussion of that. Nobody spoke to it. Nobody explained why. Nobody explained the impact of that on their current pension arrangements. They didn't explain how it applies to different categories of public workers and so on. And they were glibly going along, disrespecting Barbadians, as you said, and passing legislation which is going to impact. I am one of 4 generations of McLeans. So I'm a pensioner, and I am at the age, I can say publicly, I'm 67 years old. So Caswell, I qualify under the current legislation. You understand? And I you understand? But no, and I made my contributions. As I said, I made my contribution. I started work in like July 17th, 1974 at the welfare department. And I was making national insurance contributions till I stopped working. Right? And the point is that there are 4 generations of us, 3 of them coming after me, that I have to protect their interests. That's my immediate family, but my family is also Barbados. So when people treat us with this can't respect, high disrespect, let me put the flip side of it. You have to get worked up about it. So
Yeah, it's
I
yeah.
really think that the government needs to stick a pin. Now, I noticed, and I believe Mr. Jordan has been talking, and I heard it on the radio since you did the program about public education. I remember it was Emmanuel and others who talked about that. That these are the things before you do educate, explain, bring the legislation, let those who felt the need to have contributed to any national dialogue and town house meetings, etc., see if their contributions made the light of day. Let us see
Yes.
if you're improving the system. But I think I've said a whole lot. So I'm gonna
Listen,
pause and
somebody just said, that they have been taking notes, and the same thing with me. I'm old fashioned, and I have a book right here, and every night I'm learning something new from these two here.
my
And from
notes and my
Caswell.
research.
Caswell last night was full. And it really really bothers me, as I said, that this is something I said I'm not gonna jump in it. I'm tired. But when I sat down and I thought about it, and I said, no, but this is disrespectful. You can't treat people like this. This is unjust. This is wrong. And as busy as I am, I don't normally come on at night. I had to, Mr. Franklin. I had to. Mr. Franklin, I see Lynette is on, and she has another slant of something she wants to share, and sent around a very powerful voice note. But before she comes, I want you to say to Barbadians why, exactly why you're calling for this sick out, this island sick out tomorrow. To let us get a little bit of that, because we don't want to lose sight of that is tomorrow. Why should they do it? Okay, you're mute. Okay, let me unmute you. You need to unmute.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. There's not much that the population can do, right? They don't have, other than protest, the actions of the government right now. And this is just a form of protest to let the government know that we do not support what they're doing. We are aggrieved by it. And we were hoping that the senators, they will see that the people are serious and then send it back to the people, because right now it is not a fair complete. They can still have these consultations, they can still do everything else before this actually is debated and passed in the Senate. You do not give the Senate the last words and think that this is going to be it, and then everything is going to shut down. I want the people to know that we are not happy. The people of this country are not happy, especially when they realize that this is going to affect them. Because I gave an example to somebody today. Like, and I give it to Walter, yes. Let's say you left this country having accumulated enough money to contributions for a pension. Let's say you have 500. You can get a pension. You left, you went elsewhere to seek your living, and there's no arrangement with that other country that they can use their contributions for here, like, because they can do that for United States, United Kingdom, Canada, I think, and some CARICOM countries. But let's say you went to Russia, Bali, Singapore, some place like this. And then when you come back to Barbados, you realize, no, the system now you have to have 750 contributions. These are things that people should be made aware of before you pass this type of legislation. This should not be a surprise to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to show their disgust. I want the people to tell the government, we know that you have all the seats, but because you have all the seats, you don't have all the power.
Correct.
And that we want you to behave in a manner that will reflect the best interests of the people of this country. What this legislation has done is to reflect the best interests of the people in Parliament and the best interests of the IMF, because those are the two people who will get their way. Nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
You are hurting the people in this country. You are hurting, and the thing is, you are hurting the poorest of the poor, because the people who earn these fantastic salaries, they don't need to apply for national insurance. And in a lot of cases, they have other pension plans that they can use to supplement their pensions when they reach that age. But people in the public service at the lower levels and have a home and family to maintain don't have any excess cash that they can buy other pension plans. So their only pension will be the national insurance pension, because the government has made sure that you will not get any money from the treasury. And because they're going to wipe out the pension that you would have accumulated by the national insurance pension. So you're going to be paying for a pension that you're not going to get any money, but you'll be pensionable, but you're not going to get any funds. You're not going to get any money at the end. All this is wrong. So I want people to be aware that this is what their government is doing for them. But you remember they said, give me the vote and watch me. We are watching. That's one of the reasons why I have spoken up, because I am watching. I have stayed quiet for a long time because I said, well, look, the people are happy. They gave them 30 seats, and then they turn around and give them another 30 seats. So I said, well, the people must have been happy. So if they're happy, why am I going to get involved and try to push, change things? Because they're blissfully ignorant. And the government is doing what they want to do. But this one, I cannot sit down any longer and say, Caswell, let them go do what they're doing because the people are happy about it. But I'm sure the people didn't understand.
That's the thing.
What the government has done.
That's the thing.
And if they're still happy in the end, well, so be it. But it is unfair. It is unreasonable. And I want the people to tell the government that we realize it is unfair and this is unreasonable. But what you can do, you couldn't arrange a demonstration Tuesday because you have to let the police officers that deal with these things close on the weekend and on bank holidays. But we wanted this thing done before this legislation is passed. So the only thing that we could have done is to say, well, look, call in sick. Let the people know by your absence that you are not pleased. Because if we start demonstrating among the police off the street because we didn't get permission, and you couldn't really, even with a union that doesn't really need to have public meetings and stuff, to have permitted police permission, you still have to be sensible enough to tell the police, well, look, we need your assistance on the road because you can't walk on the road and manage that big crowd with police protection. So we had to find a way to talk to the government because they're not listening to anything else. But you remember when you had your marches, the things happen. Government responds. So we're hoping that they respond. We're hoping that they respond to the people saying, "Well, look, we are not happy with what you're doing."
Well, Mr. Franklyn, I am saying, because listening to what you guys are saying tonight, and you are the guys, you are the ones with the knowledge that with just the way the Senate is made up, it seems as though they're going to pass it. And if they do, I'm saying to Barbadians, what are you going to do? So we'll do the sick out. The sick out is to register the way that we feel, and we're hoping that we're hoping that senators there will decide that they're not going to let it go through. We can only hope and pray. But if it happens, listen, Barbadians, begin to think that once you hear that Mr. Franklyn is going to hit the streets, make sure you come out in your numbers. Numbers matter. And they don't want any, trust me, I tell you, for marches, we have been called, as I told you before. They don't want you to protest in this country. It's going to look bad on them international because the thing is that, they have this beautiful little thing going on here with these little people, right? And so on. So they don't want us to protest. But let me tell you something. Listen now. You listen social media, or you listen now what's going to happen in here. If they go ahead and pass it, and any senator listening tonight, I want you to listen carefully. The people are speaking, and listen to what the people are saying. Okay? And I'm not trying to tell people to go burn down any place and any violence, because Bajans not going to do that. I'm saying to you tonight, listen to the people and don't take the people for granted. Because if you go and pass that bill, remember you heard from the people tonight. Remember. Okay? Let me just bring Miss Lynette Eastman in at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Yes,
let me see if I can.
Right. Listen, I sat down and I listened. Welcome. Where my manners? and I like I did with Miss McLean and take all these notes. I was listening to your voice note, and I sat down and wrote out that smaller than the voice note. I made so many notes from that voice note. You guys are educating Barbados, and I love it. I love it. And you're from all different walks of life and different professions, different associations. But I want to thank the three of you, and also, of course, we thank you for that voice note, and to commend you that you have closed your business for tomorrow. Isn't that true, Miss Eastman?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. And
So,
why have you done that before you start? Why have you done that?
well, I'm not in a position where really I can call in sick because it's my practice.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to do what I can do, I decided that we would close for tomorrow, and in solidarity with those who will call in sick or whatever, because I figured you had to do something. I wanted to do something to
Why
show
you
my
want
displeasure. And
why you wanted to do why is there so much displeasure that you would lose a day of business? Why?
now so this is what my voice note was about as well, because there was a budgetary statement in 2022. It was delivered on March 14, 2022, where the proposals for reform were set out. And it was just a list, but in looking at the list, I thought that I saw things in it which I became really annoyed about. And I actually had a discussion with one of my colleagues. I said to them, well, I feel like marching about this. This was back in August. And I wrote
Back
something.
in August, when? Last year?
2022.
Oh,
2022.
okay.
And I wrote something on it. I posted it as I usually do. I think about 14 people liked it, and there were some comments, but maybe because it was not in the form of legislation, it didn't get that kind of response. Now it is in the form of legislation. People are really seeing the reality of it. But it talked about the reforms, and I was able to find it because I had downloaded it. And it says part of our comprehensive plan towards pensions then is to make the NIS a statutory corporation and more independent from government in its operations by the end of 2022. So it says, and more independent from government in its operations. So that is something I noted. To recapitalize the NIS, require it to diversify its investments at home and abroad, and ensure that where private projects seek public support, they give the NIS the choice to invest. So those things worried me, because I have some understanding of how statutory corporations function in practice. And I know that the history behind them is that it was felt that the civil service was too complex, too many rules, everything you have to go to Parliament, because how the estimates is done. People would make a joke of these things, that during the estimates process, if you want a clock, you have to put that in the estimates. So then if you realize then that you could do without the clock and you wanted a kettle, you couldn't get the kettle. You couldn't just shift over the funds. If it's a clock that the Ministry of Finance approved and the Parliament, well, then that's what you were supposed to get. So people used to make fun about that, but I guess to some extent you can understand that they're saying we need more flexibility in doing certain things. So that's why, for example, like tourism was probably one of the first things, those kinds of entities